Tony Khan finally gives an update on Ring of Honor television, where it will be, when it will begin, and who could be involved with it. Speaking of Ring of Honor, we have a new Ring of Honor World Champion, Tag Team Champions, Pure Champion, Women's Champion, and Six-Man Tag Team Champions at last night's Final Battle pay-per-view. Speaking of Final Battle, it kicked off with a bizarre botch in the finish of the opening match in the show. Keith Lee was walked out on by Swerve Strickland. Colt Cabana misses the show. We'll give you the reason as to why. We got an update on the ticket sales for Final Battle last night. MJF, the world champion of AEW, was spotted at the UFC pay-per-view last night. Speaking of MJF, he has listed future challenges for his world title. Tony Khan gives an update on the future of the Forbidden Door pay-per-view of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Trent Seven in AEW. What's his future with the company? Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into today in the world of AEW / Ring of Honor. Of course, last night was Ring of Honor's Final Battle pay-per-view of 2023, and it was a really eventful show. But arguably, the biggest news coming out of the show last night isn't actually any of the matches, which actually had a ton of title changes, and it really was a fantastic show filled with fantastic matches. But the biggest news is the future of Ring of Honor television. We now know where ROH TV is going to call itself a home. We know it when it's going to start, roughly, and who it's going to involve. And it's not necessarily what you would expect, because during the ROH Final Battle post-show media scrum, Tony Khan announced that a weekly Ring of Honor TV show is forthcoming, and it will stream on Honor Club. Fans can now access Honor Club at watchroh.com for $9.99 in terms of dollars per month to watch all ROH pay-per-views plus the TV library dating back to 2011. The first two ROH pay-per-views under Khan's ownership, Supercard of Honor and Death Before Dishonor, are also available to stream. As it currently stands, there is a soft launch for the Honor Club service, saying, quote, "So we have done a soft launch when I acquired a Ring of Honor from Sinclair Broadcasting earlier this year. One of the assets, there was a lot of assets that no one really put a lot of thought into, but they had actually done a lot of development work and were really far along on the new Honor Club. We've paid the development costs since then, and it's now functional," Khan announced. He expects pay-per-views to be uploaded to the service 90 days after airing. With that being said, ROH Final Battle 2022 should be added in March 2023. When it comes to ROH's weekly show, Khan said fans can expect New Japan Pro Wrestling to be involved as talent that will be exchanged between the companies thanks to their ongoing relationship. A premiere date has not been announced as of this recording now. However, Khan stated that an announcement will be made in January after AEW gets through their shows in Seattle and Los Angeles on January 4 and 11 respectively. Now, this is really interesting because whilst I think fans are excited that they finally know an update on the future of Ring of Honor television, it basically, if you read through it, is Tony Khan saying we couldn't get a TV deal. That's essentially what it is. And if you go back and listen to the media scrum, which I would, particularly the part after all of the discussions and question and answer sessions with the talent, the really interesting part there is when Tony Khan's talking about this, and before he announces that it's going to be on Honor Club for $9.99 a month, he essentially says that we have great working relationships with Warner Bros. Discovery. It's the most important relationship that he has in professional wrestling at the moment, talking about the success that AEW has had with TBS and TNT respectively, talking about the success that Ring of Honor has had with Warner Bros. Discovery through a pay-per-view model, saying that Final Battle so far looks to be very successful. Death Before Dishonor was very successful. Supercard of Honor was very successful. It's the most successful that Ring of Honor pay-per-views have ever been, and I don't dispute that to be a fact. And again, they've been available on pay-per-view, on BR Live, etc., etc., etc. So that's the relationship between ROH and Warner Bros. Discovery. But essentially, if you read between all of the words, and there was a lot of them that Tony Khan was using there, he's essentially saying, I tried, I pitched it, I tried to use these pay-per-views as a kind of pilot to Warner Bros. Discovery. They weren't familiar with the ROH product. I tried to make them familiar with the ROH product, and essentially they said no mas. They said, nope, we're not going to give you a TV deal. You've got Dynamite, you've got Rampage, you've got Battle of the Belts, you've got these reality shows coming up. But as of right now, ROH does not have a TV deal in the traditional sense. It's not going to be airing on a cable network. It's going to be behind a paywall and behind a Ring of Honor streaming service. That's where you're going to find Ring of Honor Weekly TV. I suppose what he might hope happens is that when they're renegotiating this TV deal with Warner Bros. Discovery later next year, in preparation for sort of 2024 time, then maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to add on Ring of Honor into that TV deal. But as of right now, because he's very conscious, they need to do something with this company. They need to do something with this brand. It's starting to infiltrate AEW TV too much. It's starting to overcrowd the AEW roster too much. And it's becoming an issue for AEW. They need to separate two entities. They need to have AEW and they need to have Ring of Honor. They need to split the rosters, and they need to keep the talent happy by having regular events, regular TV. And despite them not being able to find a TV deal, they're going to do TV anyway, and they're going to see how successful it can be between now and then, if it's profitable to run TV shows, and how many people are going to buy Honor Club. That's a question. So there's lots of massive questions coming out about this. I'm sure later on down the line, we're going to get updates about how many people are subscribed to Honor Club. It's got to be a pretty good TV show, to be honest, to get people to pay that amount of money, especially in today's climate. Obviously, I would assume they're going to put more and more of the back catalogue on that because as of right now, unless you're a hardcore pro wrestling fan or you're a fan of Ring of Honor, what's making you buy that product? What's making you spend that money? Are you willing to spend $9.99 a month for 4 weeks of Ring of Honor television? We don't know if that's going to be a 1 hour show, a 2 hour show. We don't know a lot about it at the moment. All that we know is that Tony Khan could not get a TV deal. That's basically what's being said here. He couldn't get a TV deal. Instead, it's going to be on a premium service. And what stars they're going to put on there? Are we just going to see, for instance, Claudio Castignoli? With spoiler, he won. Are we going to just see him on that show, or are we going to see him on Dynamite? What are we going to see? Are we going to see a draft of such between the two companies? I don't know. But what we do know is that Ring of Honor TV is coming back 2023. I'm assuming an announcement, as I mentioned, will be made in January, and it will probably start in February, March, around that period of time. And what that's going to look like on Honor Club, we still don't know. But that's the latest when it comes to the future of Ring of Honor TV. Now, let's talk about Final Battle. Of course, it was last night. It was a fantastic show, a really good pay-per-view presentation by Ring of Honor. And the feud between the members of the Blackpool Combat Club and the Jericho Appreciation Society is one of the longest ongoing rivalries in AEW and Ring of Honor. The storyline manifested in various ways during Ring of Honor Final Battle, including the main event between Claudio Castignoli and Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World Championship. It was an impressive display for both competitors as they executed signature moves and impressive counters to one another. But when the dust was settled, Castignoli defeated Jericho and regained his Ring of Honor World Championship. The finish itself was a very surprising one. It was a shocker and likely something audiences have never probably seen before. Now, Castignoli used a big swing. We've seen that before, where he holds his opponent's feet and swings them around and around in circles over and over and over and over again. However, this time, he did it so much, he won the match by submission. Around the 30th rotation, Jericho tapped out, and the show ended with Castignoli celebrating his Ring of Honor World Championship victory. Now, during the match, Jericho Appreciation Society members Matt Menard and Angelo Parker ran down to the ring and distracted the referee long enough for Jericho to use the bat on Castignoli. Obviously, it wasn't effective enough to end things. Their efforts didn't stop the Swiss Superman from regaining the gold. Now, I'm going to talk about some other positive moments in the night for the Blackpool Combat Club. However, Wheeler Yuta appeared after Castignoli's victory, and alongside Jerry Lynn, he celebrated the Ring of Honor World Championship victory. And certainly it was a very eventful show with multiple title changes, but Castignoli becomes a two-time ROH World Champion. The Jericho Ring of Honor story comes to an end, and I think, again, this probably ties in with ROH TV possibly saying, look, okay, if we can't get a TV deal, I ain't paying Jericho all that money just to appear on a streaming service. That's not going to happen. So Jericho's just going to be focused on AEW TV now. Hopefully this is the end of the Blackpool Combat Club Jericho Appreciation Society feud. I'm over it. I'm tired of it. It's done. Let's move on. Let's move on to different stuff. The finish, I thought, was unique and different, and I think it's a positive way to actually get a finish out of what is probably Castignoli's most over move, which is the swing. Although I do like the elevated uppercut when he throws the opponent in the air and hits the uppercut. I like that. But no, I thought it was a good win, and a lot of people complained when Castignoli dropped the championship to Jericho at Grand Slam on Dynamite. So now he's got the championship back, and he's going to be carrying Ring of Honor firmly on his back. The Briscoes, once again, them boys are the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions. This was the match of the night, one of the matches of the year in pro wrestling. And FTR and the Briscoes completed their trilogy at the Final Battle pay-per-view. The four men clashed in a double dog collar match for FTR's Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. And the trend of championships changing hands continued with this bloody brawl. Dax Harwood was chained to Mark Briscoe while Cash Wheeler was tethered to Jay. As the teams went back and forth, referee Mike Posey was even taken out of the match. He got colour as well. He was bleeding. He gigged himself after Jay pulled him in the way of a chair shot that busted him open. In the closing moments of the match, Jay hit Harwood with a superplex onto a pile of chairs in the ring. Jay then wrapped the chain around Dax's face and pulled back until he passed out. The new referee, I believe it was Paul Turner, called for the bell as Mark held back Wheeler from breaking it up. The Briscoes are now 13-time Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, ending FTR's reign at 253 days. Harwood and Wheeler, of course, captured the titles for the first time at ROH Supercard of Honor in April when they defeated Mark and Jay in their first ever encounter. The clash was hailed as an early Match of the Year contender, which set up a rematch in July at Death Before Dishonor. FTR once again defeated the Briscoes, but this time in a 2 out of 3 full match that headlined the pay-per-view. Ahead of Final Battle, FTR had been feuding with the Guns. Austin and Colton Gunn made a surprise appearance after the double dog collar match to attack FTR until the Briscoes made the save. Once the Guns were cleared out, FTR and the Briscoes all raised their hands to celebrate the 3 matches they put on this year. And as I mentioned, match of the night easily. Probably should have main evented the show, to be honest, because it was just brutal. It was violent, and everything that followed it just couldn't live up to it. Once the Briscoes won this match, that implied to me that they hadn't got a TV deal, because we know that Warner Bros. Discovery have basically refused to work with the Briscoes. So keeping them involved with the brand is, I think, smart. I think they are one of the best tag teams in the world, and the trilogy of matches between these two teams should be celebrated. It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. Not more words can be said about it. Now, Dax Howard afterwards said sort of this is the end, sort of farewell or something like that. I don't know if that just means FTR's involvement in Ring of Honor. We might be looking at a situation whereby now this is the beginning of the end of FTR dropping all of their tag team titles. They lost to the Acclaimed this past week on AEW programming. They just lost their ROH tag team titles last night. They still hold 2 sets of titles, the AAA Tag Team Championships and the IWGP Tag Team Championships. Logic would state they're probably going to drop the IWGP straps at Wrestle Kingdom in January, and AAA titles somewhere in between that as well. Their contracts are up next year around April time, he said in a recent interview with Fightful. So FTR could be on their way out of the Tony Khan umbrella. Wheeler Yuta is the new Ring of Honor Pure Champion as well. It was a night of title changes. We've still got several to talk about. But a new ROH Pure Champion was crowned at the Final Battle pay-per-view. Blackpool Combat Club member Wheeler Yuta became a 2-time Ring of Honor Pure Champion after defeating Daniel Garcia. Yuta made history whilst doing this, becoming the first ever person to hold the Pure Championship on 2 occasions. The first title stint was between January 4 to September 9, and he defended the title against Tony Nese and former ROH Pure Champion Josh Woods. Before losing last night, Garcia had been the champion since defeating Yuta on the September 9 edition of AEW Dynamite. While champion, Garcia defended his title against the likes of Brock Anderson and Leon Ruff. The Pure Championship was revived in October 2020 with a tournament that was won by Jonathan Gresham, who recently actually once again returned to Impact Wrestling. At the time, Gresham defeated Tracy Williams. It's interesting to note that Yuta was also in that aforementioned 2020 tournament. The Pure Championship was first created back in 2004, and as I mentioned, it was certainly a night that featured several title changes. I thought the match was fine. They told a story of Yuta using up all of his rope breaks early on and having all that kind of stuff, and it was a fine match. But again, I would hope that last night is the end of the whole Blackpool Combat Club versus Jericho Appreciation Society stuff on AEW/Ring of Honor programming. It's enough. It's been going on for way too long. It's been a crutch for Tony Khan at several points this year. But certainly, one thing's for sure, Yuta and Daniel Garcia, I don't think it's going to be the last time they face off. They've got great chemistry. They're both very young, and you could argue they might be 2 of the future stars for both ROH and AEW. Speaking of title changes, Athena is the new Ring of Honor Women's Champion. A new ROH Women's Champion was crowned last night at Final Battle. Athena defeated Mercedes Martinez to become the new ROH Women's Champion. Before losing last night, Martinez defeated the then champion Deonna Purrazzo on the May 4 episode of Dynamite. At the time of the match, Martinez was the interim ROH Women's Champion, while it was Purrazzo who was the real Women's Champion. Martinez's last title defense before Final Battle came against Serena Deeb at Death Before Dishonor. Last night marks Athena's first ROH reign as Women's Champion. The AEW star also holds the Warrior Wrestling Women's Championship too. Currently, Athena turned into a heel and has become more aggressive. She underwent this character persona recently. Like Athena, Martinez was previously in WWE. The 42-year-old was signed with WWE in January 2020 after working the Mae Young Classic in 2017 and 18 respectively, but she was later released in August of 2021, and in December of that year she officially signed with AEW. So Athena becoming the new ROH Women's Champion, and certainly it did feel like a night of change for Ring of Honor, and possibly the beginning of shaping up what this roster is going to look like as we head into Ring of Honor television next year. Also, we saw another title change in the six-man tag team division. It's been a big night for title changes, and it was a big night. And in a collision of two of ROH's most popular factions, the Embassy managed to pull out the victory against Dalton Castle and the Boys to capture the Ring of Honor six-man tag team championships. It was a fairly even match throughout, with Castle and the Boys using their agility and high-flying offense to pull up a valiant effort, but the overwhelming power of Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony got the best of the flamboyant trio. This ends the second six-man tag team championship reign for Castle and the Boys, who won the titles this past July at Death Before Dishonor after defeating the Righteous. They previously held the belts in 2017 after defeating Bully Ray and the Briscoes at Ring of Honor Best in the World. So certainly, again, I think this lines up with Tony Khan kind of resettling things and reshaping things ahead of the TV launch on Honor Club next year. But the show actually started off in a really bizarre way last night. The match itself was fine, but the opening match on the main card that is, a Final Battle, had a bizarre finish. In the first match of the event, Roosh teamed with his brother Dralistico to face off against Blake Christian and AR Fox. While Roosh and Dralistico dominated the majority of the match, Christian and Fox made a quick comeback, while the popular high-flying stars ended up scoring a victory over La Faction Igobernable. Probably wrong, the way I've said that. The closing moments of the bout left fans scratching their heads. AR Fox basically nailed Dralistico with a 450 splash before going for the pin. While the referee counted to 3 and called the match, he noticeably kicked out. Now, it's been speculated that that moment was botched, with many pointing out that Fox and Christian looked surprised after the bell rang. The duo celebration was cut short by their opponents, who attacked them before heading to the back. It looked like their opponents went, "Damn, we were meant to win, let's get some heat," and that's what happened, but clearly it had to be a botch. Keith Lee was walked out on last night. Swerve and Our Glory, aka Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, they've had issues. Several issues since their feud and eventual loss to the Acclaim this past fall on AEW programming. Despite this, though, they put their differences aside and reunited last night to face off against Shane Taylor Promotions, Shane Taylor and JD Griffey at Final Battle in a match built on Keith Lee's loyalty as a tag team partner. The match saw the relationship between Swerve and Lee suffer even further, with a mistimed forearm from Keith taking his tag team partner out of commission. This led to Strickland abandoning his partner, leaving Limitless Lee to fend for himself against Griffey and Taylor. Now, this paralleled the scene at Full Gear later last month, where Lee walked out on Swerve during their rubber match against the Acclaim due to Strickland slapping his partner mid-match. The former AEW World Tag Team Champions have been on a downward spiral for months now, and their rise to the top of the tag team division occurred despite their clear differences. The duo won the AEW World Tag Team Championships from the Young Bucks in a triple threat match at Dynamite Fyter Fest Week 1. Swerve's cutthroat methods were going to frustrate Lee, and their frequent in-ring miscommunications led them to losing the titles at AEW Dynamite Grand Slammed to the Acclaimed in September. But despite Swerve's actions, Lee did end up getting the win at Final Battle, capitalizing on a miscommunication between Taylor and Griffey to defeat the latter with the Big Bang Catastrophe to win his first Ring of Honor match since 2017. But clearly things are not all good in Swerve and Our Glory, and it's leading, obviously, to a match between the two tag team partners. Colt Cabana's been associated with Ring of Honor, of course, recently, as a talent and as a coach, but he didn't appear last night at the pay-per-view. He returned to the spotlight recently, where he faced Chris Jericho for the ROH World Championship on the November 2nd episode of Dynamite. Earlier on in the year, he appeared on AEW's YouTube shows, such as Dark Elevation, but since March, his presence in the ring has been very rare. This was reportedly due to him being moved over to the Ring of Honor roster, but he wasn't booked on the card for ROH Final Battle last night. It was asked by Wrestling Inc.'s Nick Hausman to ROH and AEW President Tony Khan at the Final Battle Media Scrum when he inquired about Cabana's whereabouts during the show. This is what Khan had to say, quote, "He's injured. He hasn't been cleared because he's been wrestling in the Ring of Honor matches, and that was also why the Chris Jericho storyline is all Ring of Honor champions, and everyone was really all the people from either this new ROH or, in the case of Bryan Danielson, a Hall of Famer and greatest champion ever, but pretty much everybody who came in there and represented the new era of Ring of Honor for the most part, including Colt Cabana, who had been on the last two shows, was 2-0 on 0 Hour. However, Khan stated that Cabana would have competed at Final Battle if he had been medically cleared. Quote, "I think that would have made a lot of sense because he's done great opening up the show, but he's injured or he would have been on the show. He was coaching," revealing that he was there backstage. He was coaching, which they call, it's their word for producing. So he was involved backstage. He's just injured at the moment. Speaking of Final Battle, we have a bit of an update when it comes to ticket sales. Now, Saturday's pay-per-view was the third Ring of Honor show under the Tony Khan banner after Supercard of Honor in April and Death Before Dishonor in July. Khan notably announced his acquisition of ROH in March during the brand's hiatus. Ahead of the show starting last night, WrestleTix provided their final update on the ticket sales. According to their report, Ring of Honor distributed 2,539 tickets for Final Battle, with the College Park Centers set up. 1,335 tickets were available at the time of WrestleTix sharing the report 1 hour before the 0 Hour pre-show, so maybe they might have sold a few more, but you'd probably say at least 1,000 were probably unsold. Now, ROH still doesn't have a TV deal. They have their weekly TV now going to be on Honor Club. The match has been built on AEW TV, and again, you would look at that and say, well, ticket sales weren't good, but it's Ring of Honor, and ticket sales for AEW just aren't good at the moment, so take from that what you will. Steering back to AEW though, because MJF was at the UFC last night. The tweets are most certainly coming from inside the arena as MJF continues to taunt UFC fighter Paddy the Baddy Piblet with UFC 282 in progress last night. Despite being the devil and unleashing a hellish reign of terror on the AEW locker room as AEW World Champion, MJF is a man of his word. When MJF recently called out UFC star Paddy the Baddy and a war of words over social media ensued, including a special guest appearance by Conor McGregor, it would be easy to dismiss this as a case of the Twitter fingers. However, Maxwell Jacob Friedman seemed to be prepared to back up his words as he was quite literally ringside last night at UFC 282. Now, he faced UFC star Jared Gordon in his UFC 282 effort, his fourth with the company, and it co-headlined the show last night. And Maxwell Jacob Friedman, he was shown on camera. He flipped off the camera. He watched from Octagon side, and he certainly had a good time. I don't know if this is going to lead to any crossover. I doubt it. It's probably just good promotion, but there you go. A little bit of interestingness of having MJF at the UFC last night. Speaking of MJF, he also embraced his inner Cody Rhodes because he listed a list of possible imagine AEW contenders, future contenders to his AEW World Championship, include the likes of the Pebble, that being Ricky Starks, the American Dipshit Dragon, that being Bryan Danielson, Edward, which is Eddie Kingston, Sensitive Cowboy, that being Hangman Adam Page, Jungle Jabroni, that being Jungle Boy, Darbs, that being Darby Allin, Adam, my brain don't work so I can't cope Cole, pretty self-explanatory, and Mr. Clean Castignoli, of course, the current ROH World Champion Claudio Castagnoli. How many of them will face MJF? We'll have to wait and see in the future. Forbidden Door was a very popular and successful pay-per-view for AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling earlier this year, and Tony Khan's given a bit of an update as to if we could see a second one. The event was well received by fans and critics alike, and it appears a second installment is very likely. During the ROH Final Battle post-show media scrum, AEW President Tony Khan discussed AEW and Ring of Honor's ongoing relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. While reflecting on his success with pay-per-views thus far, Khan said, quote, "In talking about New Japan and that collaboration, bearing in mind the great success of Forbidden Door means there will be a Forbidden Door 2. I'm almost certain, and I'm very excited about that." Khan reiterated that 2022 was the best year yet for AEW on pay-per-view, as they added Forbidden Door as a 5th event to their calendar without feeling like they were oversaturating the market. He praised their relationship with Warner Bros. Discovery, as they're seeing a greater buy rate numbers throughout Bleacher Report than they ever anticipated. As of this recording, a formal announcement regarding Forbidden Door 2 has not been made official. AEW is set to return on pay-per-view on March 5th, 2023 with their 4th Revolution event. It will emanate from the Chase Center in San Francisco, California. Tickets are still available, and it's a case of where that's going to be. Forbidden Door is a cross-promoted show, so it could be in the US, or could we see a Forbidden Door show that's actually in Japan, possibly in the Tokyo Dome? That would be really interesting to see too. Finally, Trent Seven, former NXT and NXT UK star Trent Seven, made his AEW debut this past weekend, and he was spotted in the crowd during Saturday's Final Battle pay-per-view. During the post-show media scrum, Wrestling Inc. senior news editor Nick Hausman asked about the status of Seven. While Seven doesn't have a contract with AEW or ROH, he could appear again in either of the promotions. Khan said, quote, "He's been in Texas, and he obviously wrestled on AEW Rampage last night. He could appear with us again. He couldn't certainly appear with us again. He's come and done really nice, so he's been here for an appearance. He competed last night and was here watching the show very keenly. He could be a good opponent for any of the champions in Ring of Honor. He was great in the championship match last night. Great show last night." So what that means going forward, I don't know. But maybe Trent Seven will be AEW. He'll be All Elite or Honored, whatever the case is for ROH. But there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW/Ring of Honor news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW/Ring of Honor news, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.